Alright, hello everyone. Let me go ahead and just turn this up real quick to make it easier. I'm back for another video. Just got back from my little trip, so I think I just wanted to record a video, get it out there. So I played a few games, and I just wanted to know in this video of, instead of doing it live, just going over and explaining kind of why I did things the way I did in each certain game. To give you a feel for the kind of thought processes that can go through as a player, and maybe you can pick up on some advice for it. Maybe you can use it in your game if you're a fascist or a liberal, depending on what I show you. So I think I want to do a few of those kinds of videos. I also wanted to address kind of the videos that were going around before between Geo, Revstar, and then there was other people. There's a lot of people that now are taking up the whole YouTube thing. I'm included now in that group, and I just wanted to kind of comment on the whole meta itself situation of people claiming whether or not, like, Geo meta is better or Riftstar meta is better, and I just wanted to kind of put that kind of stuff to rest because I feel like it's kind of at this point a little bit of a worthless conflict. That's just my opinion on the matter. So I'm just going to go over a quick game, and then I'll discuss that, and that'll basically be the end of the video for tonight, and I'll probably post another one soon, so why not? So we go to my profile, we go ahead and set this up real quick. I think it would be this one or this one. Which one of these? Okay. No, that is not the one, because that is the one with T-spinner. So for some odd reason, I've had a very long fascist streak. I mean, before this, I got fascist twice there. There's twice there. So I seem to be having a lot of fascist games to be choosing from, which is kind of why not really. I don't have any videos out yet for a liberal win or anything like that, or carrying as a liberal. So I'm going to assume this is it. So in this game, we had lines as 1, 5, 6. Traditionally, as you could play this game, it's very, not really debatable, but there's many options you can take in the game. So in this very case, you're probably going to pick 5 on the first government because, I mean, I'm seat 1 in this case. He's my Hitler, and I'm going to hope that he plays blue with me. But if I kind of pick anywhere else, I risk getting 9 for 2, 6, and then 3, 7, which means there's only one fascist, and that fascist has to put 1 and 5 back into the game somehow, which even when we were playing, he was kind of like a dark greenish player, so I don't think personally that he would have the knowledge base to kind of make a decision like that. I mean, it's not very. I'm not trying to be offensive, but that's just how I feel in the situation. So yeah. So in this case, we just played a normal 1-5 government, and it was RRB, and luckily Hitler wasn't trying to do the classic blind conf, because I know Hitlers do that sometimes, and as my personal experience, I wouldn't actually do it if I was fascist in seat 5 if I was Hitler, and I can explain that in this video, or I can explain it to a different video, just sort of kind of little rules that I have in my head as to why I should do things when and where. I mean, there's a lot of things you'll learn as you play the game. You'll have your own personal meta sort, and I think that'll actually just help you out with winning the game, etc. You'll get there. It's not too hard if you're watching this and you're not really the best player currently. I mean, there's some of the best players even make some mistakes, so all of us are not immune to being, we'll call them noobs, as we call it. So yeah, then what happens after that is 2-6 plays, and he claims to have had 3 reds, and he did. So that we have our first policy on the board. And in this specific scenario, in seat 1, I know that if 3, 4, and 7 all decide to yaw with each other on a government, they're probably going to play. And that's very debatable for me to want to risk, but usually when I do things like that, I'll do it as a liberal and a fascist because it helps to reward me. In that specific case, it doesn't make me look confirmed liberal to them, but it makes me look just a teeny bit liberal if it doesn't pass. And then, it helps with the basis of an argument for later on when I'm confiding someone else that essentially probably not in their government. So it makes it easier. So in this case, I did yaw. In 1 and 3 yawed, and then we go 3, 4, 4, 3, and I yawed as well. And 4 is picking 3, and they're both yawing. So in this case, I think 7 was a little off-put and didn't want to be picked on 3, 7 and yaw, and he didn't want to yaw 4, 7, certainly because he's not even in the government. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I just think he should be taking the chance on 3-7. So, I mean, they're all liberal, so yawing in 3-4-7 is kind of a horrendous government to be taking here. But yeah, we go to 5-1 next, and he passes me 1 blue. And in this very scenario, I mean, it's very. I usually do this. It's a double back because there's no errors in doing it. But I claimed 2 blues. I mean, 1 blue went on the board. And by claiming 2 blues, I'm basically saying that if he claims RBB, I won't say anything. I'll just keep quiet, and he'll probably know I'm his fascist. He might not. Some people don't really get that kind of signal. But he might not know, he might know. It's just a scenario that you'll have to deal with. But if it's either that or he claims RRB like he had, and then in that specific scenario, you can say that you were Hitler testing, or you can make it look like a Hitler test. You can act it off, which is kind of what I did in chat. I mean, he said that he didn't force and that he had RR being choiced. And I kind of repeated it a few times to make it look like I wasn't just gonna like give in and say, okay, he's liberal. Because if you want to do a Hitler test like that, you kind of have to space it out. You don't want to make it look like it's choppy, and you don't want to, as a fascist, certainly, because you're trying to signal Hitler. So you don't want to do it in a manner that everyone will know that it's him. But yeah, so that plays, and in this very specific scenario, it's very, I guess, questionable what can happen next. And I think what happened in this scenario was that 7 only yawed himself on 7-3, and then we got to my government. And of course, this is because 7 didn't yaw in either 3 or 4. I mean, there could be other underlying reasons for it, but he just wasn't yawed again. I mean, he wasn't yawed, not again, but he wasn't yawed there. And they gave me power to use the inv. As another general kind of rule that I do, I mean, I usually ask if like 2-6 was a delay conf, and then I'll pick 6 if they're fascist, because I mean, there's ways I can do things, and I'll show you what I did this game that very helped out. And this is kind of the things you want to be thinking in your head as a player, what you can do to basically best involve your fascists. And by involving your fascist and letting them have control of the game a little better than before, then you can help probably control your win rate higher, get it better for you as well. I mean, that's basically how I play high elo games too. I'm either really reserved back and I find a liberal, or I find means of um, playing as a liberal, or same thing as fascist, vice versa. But in this specific case, I asked in chat if 2-6 was delayed because I didn't want to pick 6 as a fascist, knowing that 6 is also fascist, and then 2-8 was a conf. And then in that case, we're both kind of screwed because I picked a fascist as fascist, which could take me out. But as that specific goes on, he says it wasn't. We get yawed, and then sadly, I get RRR, or triple reds in this scenario, which is kind of bad because you know it's 1, and then it's 2, and then you never know what happens. You know it's 4B and 5 in that scenario, in this specific case, right? It's either 4B, or if I want to assume that 5 dropped, it's 3B, because I got 3 reds. I mean, and I know that I didn't get RBB on the first gov. It's kind of just how it works. So in this specific case, I'm thinking to myself how I can better optimize the win rate, and it has to be a quick decision. You can't stall on it. But what I decided to do is I decided to conf 6, and I will say now as a disclaimer that I don't support fascist confing with another fascist. It's just something that is not really usually done. It happens a lot in lower elo lobbies actually that I've noticed, and they get away with it sometimes. But generally, as you get into higher elo, stuff like that doesn't really work anymore. So you have to be very careful with what you do. And the point behind doing this was because I wanted to make up another blue, because I didn't know if 5 dropped one, and I certainly didn't drop one, so I didn't know if like 3-5 was going to play, and then it would be like RRB or something, and he plays blue still or something like that. I just knew that I wanted to basically make it look like either way, it's either I took in or I was given in by 6, and it'd probably be a better deck. And I know that RBB is likely to come. I mean, it could be RRB, in which case I'd be praying to God that 5 doesn't drop in Conf 3, which is basically what I would be doing the whole setup, or whoever 5 is playing with, because it's probably 5 is probably playing. But yeah, I do that for that Sulfat, and because on triple reds in this scenario, I don't think that 1-6 would both, well, not both, but like either one of them would get a chance to come back into the game. The only way I can see that happening is if 6 can get involved in what I did next, which is an anti-double drop or anti-double dip, not double drop, an anti-double dip gov. And that is where I am 4 or 3 or something like that. In this case, I chose 4 and I aim them as a fascist. Um, Basically, this means that what they can do in this scenario, since they know that it can either go through, they can either cycle 3, 5, 7, which has one fascist in it, could conf. I mean, they could SC the other, in which case I have a little bit to worry about. Even on 3-5 if they conf, I definitely lose, because that means 2-7 is confirmed liberal to me, so one of them gets the government, and they can probably pick the other. So it's either that happens, or 3-5 can be blue, 5 can take triple reds and SC who he thinks is probably fascist. I mean, he could probably SC into 4-6 if he reads, and then 6 can like pick, I don't know, 3 or something, or basically any other likely. There's a whole different like, basically there's a whole set of options that could happen, and in basically a few of those options, I mean not all of them, 6 is likely to get into government again, and that's good for me because that means even if 6 comps, it's likely that 5 can either be hailed or he can get the SC. So in this scenario, what I'm doing is, since I know that's going to happen, is I'm praying to God that either 2-5 or 3-5 is Yod, and they don't go out of their way for each other. Or RBB, or I'm hoping they gets 3-5 or RB, and then 5 can like make up a blue or something because it looks bad. Maybe 5 and 1 looks bad in his case, so he's going to want to make 5 look better. I mean 1 look better. Basically any one of those scenarios. So we continue moving on. In this scenario case, I said I was willing to yaw 2-5 because he can't drop again. Of course, it's not passing because many people aren't going to really yaw that government. It's very kind of something that people regard not doing because it's just bad. I mean, it's just kind of how it works out. So we get to C3, and of course 3 picks 5 because I don't see, I mean, I guess in their scenario they can either read 4-7 liberal or they can pick 5. No, they can't pick 4 here because 4 is TL. They can either pick 6. No, they can pick 4. Yeah, never mind. I mean, I guess they just didn't want to mix gov. I mean, they can pick 4 because if I'm double dropping, I mean, it kind of makes sense if this is a passing gov. It's basically game winning to them, but it's fine. 3-5 plays, and as I suspected, an RBB was on its way. This means that it was a blue bottom deck scenario because it's a 4 blue, I'm pretty sure. It was 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 4 blue deck. And it looks like a 5 blue deck, which is a little better for C5 as Hitler, and a little I mean, kind of better for 1 and 6 because now it might look like that 1-6 can't be fash. Maybe they could think it's a double drop in the 6 blue deck, or maybe it's just a single drop from 6 and I'm covering it up or something, or cuffing it. It's all very, very, very interesting of a point of view government. But it's a 5B, and then everyone makes the decision that they need to either yaw 5 or they need to yaw 4-6, of course. But like in this scenario, I guess they were deciding who to yaw 4-6 because I stated 9-5, and every single one of them but 2, as the liberal, was 9-5 here, which is So in this scenario, we can lose still because if 4-6 confs, then they know that 1-4-6 has 2 fascists, yeah, confirmed. And they know that it's likely that since 4 is the liberal here in this scenario, then we know that, we know that if that happens, it doesn't seem like 5 might get SC, and even then we don't, 5 was forced on RBB and he played blue to 1, and then 1 picked 6 and conf. So basically you have a little bit of a gridlock. My speech is a little messed up here, sorry. But the best case scenario is that 4-6 plays and they get no info, which is basically what happens because it's 3 reds. In this case, 2 is putting extra shade on everyone who yawed 4-6. Oh, I probably shouldn't have fast forward. But he puts shade on them. We're on the SC, and I decide that I think it's best, in my opinion. I state that I think that they can yaw that if they want to because it doesn't hurt them as a liberal, and I state that it's better to SC3. Of course, 3 didn't call me liberal after game. I don't know if that's something that's like they personally read that because they're a friend of mine, or if that's just something that they get insight for. If they're just, I don't know. It's just kind of how it works. But I mean, I'm still trying, so you still have to give that point of view. And the only reason I'm SCing 3 is because it's either that 3 can likely pick 1, maybe, or 3 can pick 5. And if 2 and 7 are not really silent, 5 can pitch himself to 3, and then he can get hailed, and it's a 100% win rate, which is basically what we want. So I'm SCing 3, but they decide as a group underline, or in this case, 4 decides, hey, I want to SC 5. And then 2 jumps on board for basically no reason. And because 2 jumps on board, and there's 2 liberals that are SCing 4, I mean 6 is probably going to SC 5, and that means that 2, 4, 6, and 5 are all SCing 5, so 5 is passing. So I basically state that 5 is a Yod government. Doesn't matter, because 7 isn't really talking. I mean, he can SC to 3 like me, but it doesn't seem like 3 is passing, so 5 gets the SC. And then this is kind of where it comes into play. I mean, it wasn't really that bad. It was kind of like a signal at this point, but I was kind of like telling 5 that I'm on his team. So I mean, it's just kind of how it works out. So he gets his presidency and he picks 5. He picks 1, sorry, and it goes through, which is really good, I guess, because that means it's a Fash Gov, which means on RBB, then we have a 100% win rate. On RRB, I mean, it's a little hard to convince him to shoot 4, or he might just shoot 6, or he might shoot me thinking that it's like 1. He might be thinking it's 4, 5, 6 or something. So he shoots 1. He could be thinking it's like 1, 1, 3, 5, 1, 2, 5, 1, 5, 7. Basically, any one of those lines. He could think it's like 1, 2, 5 since 2 is SCing 5. He could think any one of those options, and he could shoot into like he could shoot 6 over 4. I mean, because he might shoot 4 on RRR, but it's just, I mean, it doesn't. He's trying to make himself look liberal. But in any case, we want to make sure that we can try to get him with a government that best benefits us, and he picks 1. It gets Yod, and he gets RBB. And of course, in this scenario, we shouldn't be BMing, but in chat, we kind of sat there for a little bit, and I told him to shoot 4, and he's like, hey, I don't want to do that. And then 4 is trying to signal him that it's 4, 5, 6, which is feasibly impossible because 1 dropped a blue and then claimed 2 reds, so he gave 7 gun without even stating it. In which case, 4, he might shoot 6, thinking that 1 is his fascist, and he might think that 4 is also his fascist. So you could think it's like 1, 4, 5. So he's trying to see if I'm going to waver on my opinions on 4. And then 4 is fake outing, and I can't really say like, oh no, you should be shooting this person because it's 4, 5, 6 or something like that. So in this scenario, I decided to tell him that it's 1, 5, 6, and he should shoot basically anyone left, and I told him that the feasibility is the fact that I dropped a blue for him, so he shoots 7. So it's a 3v3. It's a confirmed 100% fascist win rate at this point, and they just top deck the game, which is kind of a lit waste of time, but I mean, a few extra seconds wouldn't hurt. So in this specific scenario, I just wanted to go over like quick thinking. I mean, there's critical thinking steps in this scenario, so you know that it's a 4 blue deck. You don't want to make 5 look worse, or you don't want to make other people look worse, or you want to make you want to put a fascist into government again. So you always want to be thinking what you can do to put your fascist in government again, or as a fascist, how to make yourself look better, or how to make your Hitler look better. In this scenario, I don't think I necessarily succeeded in making 5 look better, but I definitely got 6 back into government as 4, 6 pass. I mean, there's other scenarios to it. There's just like making sure you make a critical SC. You don't just say like, oh yeah, SC2 because he 9, because then that won't stand in high elo games. It's just not gonna happen. So that's kind of just how it works. I mean, you got to be thinking critically. As a liberal, you want to do the same thing. You want to be wondering why. Like in my scenario, I'd be wondering why 1 picks 6. If 1 comps it, I might be a little sus of like why 1 is doing that, and then he's envying 4 fascists. So like in my opinion, I'd be like, why is 1 double dipping here? So he's either double dipping because 2, 3, 5, 7 has 2 fascists, in which case you'd want to solve for the fascists. In 257 RS3, or like in 357, you know that in those scenarios you want to either find it, or you want to critically think whether or not there are 2 fascists, or you want to see, or you want to think to yourself, okay, so 1, what does 1 know in his C position? What's going to happen? Well, I know that 3-5 will likely play will be RBB, which means 4-6 is likely to pass after. Or my best scenario, it'd be 6. And if source 6 gets RRB, then it's eh. I mean, it's kind of how it works. You could SE someone else and 5 can get picked, but there's certain scenarios to it that they know could result. I mean, that's kind of just how it goes too. You want to be thinking about it. That's kind of how it goes. Yeah, I think that's basically about it when I go through that game. So I just want to go through that game because it was a very interesting one, and I think it's definitely worth talking about. Um, so yeah, I did promise at the end of the video I was going to have a quick forward basically about what was going on between um, people on YouTube and Secret Hitler making content and stuff like that. And I just wanted to put out there about meta specifically, as well as like win rate statistics, kind of putting that kind of stuff to rest. I just want to say when I was looking over it, there was people that were like, "Oh yeah, Geo meta is better, or Star meta is better," blah blah blah, basically arguing and taking sides in the matter. And in my opinion, I don't think that was really worth the time. I mean, we all have our own personal metas that we all attend to. So like Geo has his Geo meta, Riftstar has his way of playing, and I mean, he doesn't really preach it on his channel. Riftstar does more stuff based on Iconics Guide and better interpreting it and putting it into the game, and he's basically making guides that basically help someone understand how this stuff is in practice. And I can't say that that's a bad approach. I mean, it teaches you the essentials of the game to win it as a beginning player, and it sets you up for high elo stuff. And in the process, you'll probably learn how to have your own personal meta in the middle of it. So you're probably going to be picking your own way of playing, which helps you win. Um, just in that case, we all have our own little metas that we do things. We have things that we do as players that maybe no one else really does. I mean, like there's other things that we also do as players that we can agree on that other people do. Like personally, I can say that I don't think Geo is the only one to say that you should inv a purple player. Because if they're live, they can carry possibly. If they're fascist, you're taking them out and you're making it to where it's harder for them to win, and you're increasing your win rate as a liberal by doing that. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. So I just think that there's stuff that we all do. And I don't think anyone should be bashing each other for it. And I also don't think that you should be pitting your meta above everyone else. Because your meta, you might have it works for you, but it might not work for other people. And I don't think you should be putting emphasis in making guides on your own personal meta. Because it's personal for a reason. I mean, things that work for me might not work for you. And I can give an example from my own past experience. Um, as an ending note for it before we end the video. Uh, when I was on Starsheep at the time and I was playing and I was in the 1900 range, I made my own little um, personal elo of sorts. I was making personal elos for like top decking, and my elo was basically based off of this just very small unethical research that I made with this guy named Firecup, and we basically theorized about certain specific points in the game in which a top deck could actually result in a liberal win without having to basically without having to play for INV, which is also very common. Um, Something like, keep going on certain top decks. And of course, the common one people knew was the top deck 4 times in a new deck, which you're assuming that a blue is going to show up in the top 4 cards, which isn't always the case. Or the other one that I was experimenting with was basically the first 3 governments in the game are claimed as 2 reds and a blue in every single government, so it's considered 3 blues in, let's see, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 8. 3 blues and 8. And in this scenario, we're assuming that if no one dropped, that the win rate is actually 92% because you're assuming that the only way you can lose is if the blues are literally all on the bottom. And this is because what you're doing is you're top decking the game from 8. You know that you're going to top deck 8 to 2 is 6 times. So you can have no fascist policies on the board and top deck those 6 times, and every single one of those policies can be red. However, what you're saying there is that it's someone could have dropped first off. That's kind of how it works. I mean, someone can drop in those governments, and then it's definitely a loss. But what we're saying there is this specific case that makes it a loss is that if no one drops, then it's 3 blue and 8. And if you top deck 6 times, you're going to get 1 blue. So it'll be 4 blues and 5 reds on the board, meaning you're in veto zone in a new deck that is 8 cards, which is basically the essential same thing as saying that you're top decking for a 25% win rate as a liberal, which isn't good because you're damaging your win rate. But it was at the time when I was doing the research on it, or research of sorts, it was just something that I believed worked. And that's not the case. I mean, it doesn't work in every scenario. All I know is that I played one game with it, or I played a few games, and I got cocky because in those games, most of the times, out of like 5 out of 6 times, it worked. And in one case, it resulted in a 5-0 game because when we top decked, it top decked blue basically twice after playing two things. It resulted in that, which was really cocky, and the other time was that it basically barely passed for top deck, but 4 people did it, so we have the golden rule, which is something that you can learn about by reading Iconics Guide or watching Ristar's video on it. But in essentiality, um, it helped us basically win the game. Help us um, top deck the rest of the game, and then it was like 2 reds on the board, and then we top decked the last blue, so we won. But in that scenario case, I was thinking, hey, this is actually a really good meta. I'm going to try this everywhere I go. And it doesn't work everywhere you go. And then you also have games where it's just like 1-5 double dropping, or not double dropping, but like both dropping respectively. So 1 and 5 dropping, or 1 and 2 dropping. And in that scenario case, if you top deck the game, you're losing. And of course, 1 and 5 are all for that because they know they're going to win. And they know that it's only in this scenario case, if you got blue, there's 5 blues. This means there's 1 blue and 8, which means it is confirmed that 6 fascist policies are going to top deck before the game ends. Most likely. I mean, you can be spared, but I mean, you still have to reshuffle that deck and top deck again, which means it's basically a 25% chance of win again. So it's just not good for you. But we had a game like that, and I remember thinking about it, and it was just a tragedy. And it might have worked in other games, but it didn't work in that specific game, and I got heavily flamed for it. And I kind of learned my lesson in that scenario, that was kind of my own little meta thing that I do. And it worked for me up until that point, but that doesn't mean you should be enforcing it on the table, or you should be making guides and all this other junk about your meta, because it's just your meta as a person, and you can't necessarily win off of that. And I just think that's just something that is what we should all take into account. So I just wanted to put that out there. It's a little bit of a long speech, but I was just kind of looking over that, and I think it's a very important thing to say. I mean, I don't necessarily get along with Geo, but I can say that his meta works for him. It works for him. It's just something that works out. But I don't think that everyone should be talking smack to each other, essentially. Um, Even when you're making a guide, you shouldn't be talking about someone else, saying that they're not worthy of this and that, because we all try our best to win. It's kind of just how it works. So it's basically my little thing about it. Yeah, okay. So yeah, this is a 28-minute video, so it's a little bit long. It's definitely longer than my last video. Um, I'll be making more videos like this in the future, maybe adding a little bit more of like guide aspects into Golden Rule and etc. But I mean, for now, that's about it. So hope you guys all enjoyed watching this video. I'll make more in the future, and yeah, see you guys later.